Thank you for joining me. Minelab Manticore time again. As promised, here's my simple setup to get you up and running in the field with the minimum of adjustments. What I found with this Manticore is the simpler you can keep it, the better it is. Some of these settings are just personal preferences, but you'll get the rough idea as we go along. And also, I will be putting my settings on the Skill School website so you can go there and just read them, so there's no rush. Okay, let's get into it. For a start, I don't bother with the ferrous regions because I don't use discrimination. I use the horseshoe on, so it's all metal all the time, and I use the tones to determine what to dig and what not to dig. And I think here in the iron gives you a better chance of identifying iron. There's one there, look. Oh, it's a piece of lead, look. Happy days. A lot of lead in this field. So it's up to you. I mean, there's plenty of videos out there showing how to adjust this, how to adjust that regarding the ferrous bar, but for me, I don't think it's worth spending any time on. These are the basic settings. Volume, obviously, personal preference. All-terrain general. Now this is probably the safest mode to use. I quite like using it. I find big and small targets, but you've got other choices. You've got all-terrain fast, all-terrain low conductors, but to be fair with you, I've used the low conductors and I haven't found anything smaller than what I'd use in the all-terrain general mode, so what's the point? And then you've got high conductors. I guess if you're in the USA searching parks for silver coins, great, but not for me. Trash reject, again the park scenario. Beach, low conductors, beach, beach deep, beach surf and seawater. Okay, that's Goldfield. So let's keep it simple. Let's stay with the all-terrain general, and you've got a star next to that because I've made it one of my favourite programs. Let's go up. Noise cancel. Yes, every time you go out detecting, every time you go near another detector and get a bit of EMI, always do a noise cancel. You can press it once like that, or you can press and hold it and do a rolling noise cancel and see what it sort of settles on. Yeah, it's quite keen on 1 and 3, isn't it? So okay, so that's your rolling noise cancel, which is more accurate. Ground balance, never touch it. The only time I ground balance the machine is if the pinpoint has started sounding off on the ground. We don't tend to get it here in the UK. We don't get hot soil, so ground balance, I leave it as it is. I see so many people in the field in the UK pumping the coil, trying to get a good ground balance. It's not worth it. You can make things worse by trying to get a ground balance, so let the machine do its stuff. And if you want to know a little bit more about the screen information, my first video was all about the target ID and target trace, so take a look at that video. Recovery speed, now this is an interesting one. I don't tend to deviate off of 5, maybe 4 on a really quiet site, 6 on a really busy site, but I find depending on search coil, 5 is a really good setting, so let's not even mess around with that. That's your discrimination patterns again, we're not going there, we don't need to bother with them. Ferrous limits, we don't need to bother with them. Customs, no. Okay, keep going up. Ferrous volume, I like it quite loud. Ferrous pitch, obviously that's the pitch of the low tone. Stabilizer, now that's an interesting one. If you're getting lots of false signals, by all means use the stabilizer. So stabilizer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 12. Okay, but now there's a little caveat with this stabilizer, because if you're searching a Roman site and you've got little minims and little low-grade Roman coins next to iron, the stabilizer can sort of null it out a little bit. So use the stabilizer as low as you can get it. Now the next one down is stabilizer filter. Now that attenuates the sound from the rejected targets like the iron. Little bit too heavy in my opinion. I wouldn't bother using that at all, but again, if you need to, do it. But it does null the machine a little bit when it comes to the audio of it all. Sulky teenager again. More lead, more tiny lead. I know that's just another piece of lead, but what I will say is this Manticore's not shy on finding targets. It keeps you quite busy, you know. Well, if you've got a Manticore, Equinox, or any other machine for that matter, why not sign up for one of my Skill School one-to-one training sessions? The links can be found below or on the Skill School website. Right, let's go back up one. Tones. Now, I see a lot of people using different tones. You've got a lot of choices there. You've got 5 tones, 1 tone, 2 tone, 5 tone, 1 regional tones, 2 regional tones. So what's the difference between 2 tones and 2 regional tones? Well, it's self-explanatory on the screen. What you've got is key points. You've got 1 key point there, 1 key point there, and they determine your changes. So I've got a hybrid 2-tone. I've got your low tone for the low conductors, and they don't deviate off of that tone, and the pitch is number 14. Okay, and then it goes up, so it's a single tone, full tone, a hybrid. So this is based on the conductivity of the target. So low tone, high tone, and it's a sliding scale. So regarding the tones, this is what we're looking out for. The low sulky teenager for the low conductors, and then once it passes that band, it goes up like a ski slope. So that's your tones going from low to high depending on conductivity. So that's really all we've got to listen out for, that low tone and the raising high tone. So if we get a high conductive target, it'll be a real squeaker. Volume, as always, 25, pitch 14. So the T2 starts at target ID 21, which is there, and it goes all the way up to the top. I can do a little video just on setting this tone up if you want, but I think you guys will probably work it out. That's a higher pitch one. You can see how it's going up that line, can't you? Crikey, that's hard to dig this bit. That's it. That is a little Roman coin, look. There she is. She's drying out. I can't see a lot on it at all. So why do I like to use a hybrid 2-tone? Well, I like to keep things simple because that's the key with this Manticore, really. Keep things as simple as you can. And a lot of the adjustments within the system are just personal preferences. So the fact I use a 2-tone program, oh, okay, let's dig this one. I'll talk about my 2-tone program. Folded over piece of something. I don't think it's anything interesting. Here in the UK, we're not really too fussed when we're on an ancient site what conductivity levels things are, because we'll dig everything that isn't iron. So having a 2-tone program makes things a lot simpler. Now, if you were to use, say, a 5-tone program on a Roman site, what does that mean? Unless you're digging specific targets which come up within those tones, it's pretty much pointless. Again, it's down to personal preference, but I find if you have lots of different tones, it can be mentally tiring. So the simpler you can get those tones, the easier your life will be. Now, why do I use a hybrid 2-tone? Because I like that sulky teenager sound, because my ears are tuned into that low sort of sound. So I have the low tone up until, I can't remember what number it was, and then it turns into a full tone. So you don't get segments of tones, it's all blended into one, so it doesn't mentally tire you, it's good on your ears. And also, if you're using multiple tones, you get what we call tone bleed. So if you've got a 5 tone, if a target falls within tone 3 and 4 just on that break, you'll get 2 different tones, and it sounds a little bit like audio fruit salad. So that's why I want to keep the tones as simple as possible, and I absolutely love that low sulky teenager tone, which you'll hear me referring to quite a lot in my videos. Audio theme: normal, enhanced, depth, prospecting. Now normal is probably my go-to audio theme. It's just got a nice fluty sound and you've got a lot of information within that signal. Enhanced, now you'd use that if there was a little bit of EMI floating about, so it tends to filter out a lot of EMI. Depth, well that's your pitch mode, that's a VCO, voltage controlled oscillator, so that revs up on shallow or big targets, and it's a quiet murmur on deep or small targets. Just a pitch mode, that's all it is. Then you've got prospecting, which is your gold mode, and then you've got threshold level, threshold pitch, and your tone profiles. You've got simple, medium, and rich. Now these profiles are how you want the machine audio to modulate. Now modulation's quite simply the intensity coming from targets. So if you have a high modulation, a deep target will sound quiet and a shallow target will sound loud, and that's all it is. That's all the modulation does. So for example, if you're searching and you want everything to sound the same audio level, deep or shallow, then you use simple. If you want a little bit of modulation to hear some depth, then you use medium, and that gives you a good interpretation of the small, deep, large, shallow targets, and that's the one I like to use. And then you've got the rich. Now the rich gives you a lot of modulation. You can really hear those deep targets as a faint whisper, and that's perfect if you want to cherry pick the deep targets. For example, if you're searching a park and the good stuff is deeper, then you'll use the rich audio, and that gives you a better perception of depth, so you can leave the loud shallow targets and just cherry pick the deep ones. And that's all that is. It's just the modulation of the signal. So I think a lot of you guys have already worked this one out. This Manticore is one of the few metal detectors which is ready to go out of the box. You don't really need to make any adjustments. What adjustments you do make are really personal preferences. Let's go up. Frequency multi-IQ plus. To be fair with you, I've never used a multi-frequency yet when the single frequencies are better. So I don't know why it is, so just stick with multi-IQ if you can. Only use single frequency if you've got really, really bad EMI. But don't get me wrong, I am a massive fan of single frequencies. You've got 5 kilohertz, 10 kilohertz, 15 kilohertz, 20 kilohertz, 40 kilohertz, and multi-IQ plus. General settings, here we go. English, yes please. Vibration, handle vibrate, you don't need that. Lights, interesting with the lights, you have a display there, keypad lights, flashlights, but just up there in the top, that is a light sensor, so that can sense when it's getting dark or light and adjust the lights accordingly, which I think is pretty cool. Soft keys, so you can have shortcuts to any of these keys. I've got the noise cancel on one and I've got the speaker mute on the other. The Ferris indicator, you can have a red line underneath it, you can have red numbers, your choice entirely. Reset, underwater, no. So that is it. That is my Minelab Manticore quick setup guide.